most of you, but I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to be reading from my first novel, Rising Tide. It's a young adult vampire mystery. It won a gold medal for Reader's Favorite for 2015 Young Adult Mystery and the new Apple Summer ebook Awards. And I'm also going to read a little bit from a children's book that my husband helped me put together. He did all the formatting, and my awesome illustrator, Rachel, she lives in Ottawa. It's the true story of our little rabbit Butters. Aww. And it's called Butters Comes Home. And there's a picture of him on the back. But so far it's been very well received, and it has a Reader's Favorite 5-star review. So we're very proud of that. I'm from Tennessee originally. I went to school in Pennsylvania. I had my master's in literature. I was going to be a teacher, but I hated student teaching.
And students.
Well, I just am not good at classroom management. They kind of just ran all over me, and it was very frustrating. But I'm going to start with that. But anyway, I moved to Vancouver, and then I met my husband, and I moved to Ontario. I've been here for 7 years, so maybe I'll stay. I'm not going to tell you a whole lot about the book, just so you'll get a good impression of it from the first chapter, I think. But I'm just going to read the first chapter to you so that you kind of know what's going on and everything. So the first chapter is called Mink. When my mother told me we were moving to Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada, to say I was shocked was more than an understatement. Why, Mom, was all I asked, although there were a ton of other questions running through my mind. Was she going to quit her job? Did she already have a new one? Where would we live? Was she going to sell our small but familiar house? What had made her come to such an unthinkable decision, to move from our small, boring Pennsylvania town to a city as unimaginable to me as Vancouver? She ruffled my hair with a smile, one that wasn't present in her eyes, and answered, "Oh, come on, Mink, don't look at me like that. I'm hoping it will help your condition." My name wasn't Mink, it was Mara. The embarrassing nickname was given to me by my mother because of the particular brown of my hair. Mom had told me I was born with a large shock of it on my head, which had reminded her right away of a mink cap, attractive. But my real name had been a constant source of bother to me, so much that I would cringe almost any time I heard someone speak it aloud. I had looked up its meaning once, hoping for something generic like flower or happiness, only to be stuck with sea of bitterness. Glaring back at me, glaring back at me from the webpage. When I growled this discovery at my mother, her apologetic tone made me see that the dark meaning wasn't an accident. "It was a hard time for me, Mink," she said, casting her cat green eyes down. "But really, don't you think it's a pretty name?" I hadn't known what to say in response. In time, I resigned myself to accepting that I was just a part of the disappointment that seemed to overwhelm her life. I knew that I was a constant reminder of my father, whom she'd lost before I was born. He had been the most magical thing she'd ever experienced, she told me once. I guess you could say I was the consolation prize she got stuck with. I tried hard to make up for his absence, but finally realized that none of my efforts could ever completely repair the fissure in her heart. The realization wasn't enough to make me stop trying, though. My straight-A status always inspired a big smile, but it was incomplete, hollow. Unlike other 16-year-olds, I kept not only my own room, but the rest of the house as well, irrationally spotless. My 3 parentless afternoon hours were spent cleaning so that she never had to bother. That earned me an, "Oh, Mink, what would I do without you?" at least once a week. She would even use her best pretending to be happy voice. At present, I was coming rapidly to the end of my junior year. May was nearing its middle, and with the coming of spring, my condition, as Mom put it, would always worsen. Most teenagers were in love with the sun. In Indiana, Pennsylvania, springtime meant more sun, even though it did still rain a lot, which made most of its inhabitants jubilant. But not me. Spring meant my torture was about to begin. The excuses for staying in, the fabricated illnesses, the further separating of myself from normal humans in general. I've been born with fairly pale skin. Maybe fairly wasn't a good word choice, since it was more like extremely pale skin. In most places, my blue veins were beyond noticeable, like sky-colored worms sliding right beneath the surface. Couple this with my eyes so dark brown they were almost black, and the deeply brown brunette of my hair, and you have one very strange-looking human girl. My pallor was probably one of the reasons I grew my hair long, attempting to hide as much of myself as possible. If the color of my skin hadn't been enough to drop me in the freak category, I had also been born with an extreme sensitivity to the sun. In fact, most fair-skinned people are struck with this affliction, but I didn't just burn easily. The sun made me physically ill. I couldn't be out in direct sunlight for more than half an hour without becoming violently nauseous. It was beyond embarrassing, besides making me feel like a carnival attraction. I'd once ruined the interior of my mother's new car due to the sun shining on the side of my head for too long. She quickly invested in the darkest window tint she could have installed. And today, of course, the sun was shining miserably on my head as I quickly headed for the oak tree-shaded bus stop. In my rush to get out of the house, I'd forgotten to put on my dark sunglasses, but I dug them out of my pack now, twisting around awkwardly as I made my way into the comforting shadows. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Katie Parker coming out of her house across the street. Great, I murmured under my breath. Placed beside Katie's blonde tan perfection, I looked all the more irregular. I tried to put on a happy face anyway and be sociable, a definite struggle for me. Hi, Katie, I said with as much enthusiasm as I could muster. I refused to ever say good morning, as I hated mornings and saw nothing good about them whatsoever. I didn't expect much in the way of a reply. Katie, annoyingly perky in her cheerleading uniform, was miles away from my end of the social spectrum. So I was shocked when she turned her bright blue eyes on me dazzlingly and spoke to me in a way she never had before this day. Hi, Mara. She was so chipper it was stifling. Beautiful morning, isn't it? I wondered briefly what she would say if I shot back, actually, I like the rain, like I was thinking. I thought better of it and replied, sure is. Aren't you excited about prom, she bubbled. Oh, so that was it. She was overexcited about prom and probably just needed an outlet for venting all her pent-up enthusiasm. Prom was in a few weeks, and no one had asked me, not that I really wanted to go. The thought of my pale shoulders exposed in some fancy dress made me cringe. I tugged at the edge of one of my long sleeves unconsciously in response. Well, I hadn't really planned to go. I cringed again, waiting for the sardonic giggle or the accusation that I couldn't get a date. Instead, the corners of her mouth turned down. Oh, that's too bad. She sounded like she really meant it, and I wondered if I actually was standing here on the sidewalk with her instead of still lying sleeping in my room. This was more attention Katie had given me than in all the years we'd gone to school together combined. Our last interaction had been a nasty putting to the hair incident in first grade. Me on the receiving end, of course, resulting in a demand from my mother to hers that Katie stay far away from me or else. I think I must have been looking at her with my mouth hanging open. She quickly tried to fill the silence. I could get Trent to set you up with one of his friends, she offered eagerly. My quick temper flared. I don't need a pity date, I snarled. She looked hurt at that, and I was instantly ashamed of responding so venomously. I didn't mean it that way. Her eyes were wide. I felt worse. How could she understand all the defenses I put in place to remind myself to keep away from others and avoid the way they treated me like the freak I was? Maybe my behavior had made it into something worse than it really was? First grade was a long time ago. I dropped my eyes to the sun-speckled shadows falling from the leaves above. I'm sorry, Katie. I made up an excuse fast. I didn't sleep very well last night. My voice trailed off. How could I expect to be forgiven? It was unlikely in the first place that someone like her would talk to someone like me, and I'd already gone and messed things up. Not that I really cared, I told myself. I was used to the sanctuary of solitude I built around myself. To my extreme surprise, she brushed it off with a wave of her hand. It's okay, Mara. I never meant to offend you. Of course you're pretty enough to get your own date. I'd kill to have hair like yours. Was she kidding? At that moment, her twin brother emerged from the house. Trent sauntered across the street toward us. Like his sister, he was blonde perfection, except he was huge and heavily muscled, as she was sleek and slender. The hours of football practice were evident in the rippling muscles that covered his 6'3" frame. He still made me gape in awe. I'd had a crush on him since 9th grade. Not that it would ever do me any good. "Morning, Mara." He did a double take. "Nice hair," he noted, and looked at me as if with new eyes. Yep, I had to be dreaming. "Thanks." It came out way too soft, and I felt myself blush. I lowered my head quickly. When I looked back up, Katie and Trent were looking at each other, something unintelligible passing between them. I shrugged it off, chalking it up to being a twin thing. "You're not driving today?" I managed to ask, trying to make conversation. It wasn't often he left a red Mustang convertible at home. "In the shop." He grinned back at me. I realized he'd never really been much of a conversationalist. It took away a little of his fairy glamour. I smiled to myself at that thought. I heard the bus coming then, but I was the only one who turned around to see. Funny, it was way down the street, not nearly as close as it had sounded. How could I hear the engine running from so far away? As suddenly as the sound had amplified in my head, it died away. It was like the sound was fading away to normal. I shook my head to clear it. Weird. Katie and Trent were standing beside me, uninspired looks on both their faces. I pinched myself rather hard on the leg to see if I could wake myself up. All I ended up with was a bruise, ugly on my too white skin. The dreamlike feel to the day continued as the hours passed. Trent actually invited me to sit with him and the rest of the football players and cheerleaders at lunch. Besides having next to nothing in common with any of them, I felt even more flawed amid their little sea of perfection. "Say, Mara, what are you doing this Saturday?" Trent asked. I almost choked on the French fry I was attempting to swallow. I had been planning to study for upcoming finals. The end of school was almost a month away to the day. Of course, I would never admit I was that lame. "Nothing special," I managed after I got the fry down. "We're going swimming down by the bridge. Want to come?" His invitation was much less than eloquent, but it still made my heart flutter. People never asked me to go anywhere. Not that I'd ever really tried to connect with anyone in high school. The teasing I endured during elementary and junior high had been more than enough to make anyone avoid human contact. It turned me into a bookworm and a bit of a video game freak. Sure, I was trying to be casual, but it came out as a squeak. One of the idiotic cheerleaders let out a laugh at my response. Katie, of all people, reprimanded her. "Geez, Wendy, what's your problem? Just shut up, okay?" She put a menacing edge on the last 3 words. The day just kept getting stranger. Katie poured sunshine into a brilliant smile. She then turned on me. "You'll come, right, Mara?" I settled for nodding my head in response. It was only Monday, so I had 5 whole days almost to change my mind. Later that night, I stood in front of the mirror, fresh out of the shower, blow-drying my hair. I looked a bit closer, trying to see something there that would possibly cause perfect Katie Parker to wish she had my hair, and cause her brother to take special note of it. I realized, stunned for a moment, that it was different somehow. I'd always thought of my hair as ordinary. It was dark. It was a dark, unusual kind of brown, but I'd always been disappointed with its flat, lackluster look and straight texture. Tonight, even under the subdued lighting in our bathroom, my hair shone with new light. I blinked and looked back, picking up a strand for close examination. I turned the dryer off and ran my hand down the lock, amazed at how it felt glossy. Dark highlights played across the surface as I twisted my head under the scant light. And there just seemed to be so much more of it as well. I ran both hands up through and along the sides of my head. It was so thick and silky soft like never before. Or had I just never noticed? Did Katie's unexpected comments somehow wake me up to see things I'd never seen in myself before? Impossible. I didn't remember my hair ever being like this, and even twisted to the side to get a glimpse of it falling down toward my waist in waves more like my mother's hair. Smiling, I shrugged and turned the dryer back on. The logical part of my brain chalking the whole thing up to Kai Lynn purchasing some expensive salon brand shampoo that I hadn't noticed in the shower. Satisfied with my theory, I didn't dare pull the shower curtain back to check.
Facebook Live.
Okay, I'm going to read a little bit from Butters Comes Home, just a little. I know I'm probably edging on my time Butters was a rabbit of discriminating taste. It was very hard to be a rabbit of discriminating taste when one lived with chickens. Butters was born into a litter of 6 kids on a cold winter day in January. Oh. As you can see, Rachel is fabulous. He lived in a wire-bottom cage in a shed with many other cages along the walls, with many other rabbits living inside them. Chickens also lived in the shed with Butters and the other bunnies. His mother told him the shed was too cold in the winter and too hot in summer. Butters only knew about winter. He huddled close to his brothers and sisters to keep warm, and they all loved snuggling with Mama. Yeah. One day, the man who brought food moved Butters and his siblings into one of the cages on the far wall away from Mama. Butters felt very sad. He could see Mama, but could no longer snuggle with her or feel her warm, rough tongue on his fur. Mama tried to make Butters feel better by singing to him with her sweet voice when the man was gone. And this is actually, like I said, a story about our Butters. We did get him from a breeder. I know it's horrible to buy from a breeder, but trust me, we rescued him. We did, and he is a wonderful little bunny. Very stubborn, but very sweet. 4.
Oh.
He was 4 months old when we got him, and he's 4 now.
Thank you, Claudette. All right, thanks everyone. We have another short break, and then we'll be back for Ryan's reading in just another 10 minutes, okay? And now we have no more behind glares. I realize Marcy probably looked like